So I'm Scarlett Kefford and I'm a writer and producer from Birmingham, and I founded Sirens. So I did an English literature degree, and I had always intended to be a writer, and then actually with undiagnosed ADHD, it turns out writing a novel was less than what I could actually manage. And whilst doing the course, I had a module in screenwriting, and this really sort of inspired me and made me realise that's where I wanted to be. And while I was doing that, just in my own time, I made a short film. It was only 16 seconds long, as that was the remit, and I came runner-up in a Rain Dance Film Festival competition. And from there, when I left university, I realised I couldn't afford at the time, the way the masters were set up, to do a masters. I couldn't get it funded, so I just wanted to learn about film on the job. So I started taking runners' work, and from there it just it spiraled quite quickly for me. I jumped up very fast. I went from a runner to a production coordinator in a couple of months, and then I was going off to big shows like Casualty, and I then was doing second assistant director work as well. And even though I only ever really got into the industry to learn about it on the job in order to write, I was quite capable in the organisation of production and doing quite well, and it was enjoyable, so I just got swept up in it. But unfortunately, from sort of the end of 2017, I started developing symptoms, and I became chronically ill, and that chronic illness has led me to become disabled, and I have issues with mobility as well as chronic pain and chronic fatigue as well, and it just wasn't really suitable for working in production. Unfortunately, it's not a very friendly industry for people who are disabled, and I do a lot of campaigning around that in my spare time for change there. But in the meantime, I'm trying to re-enter the industry in script writing and development instead. See, there is a veil of secrecy over this industry of getting in, even at entry-level running positions. You have to use sort of every contact you can possibly find. I used to use a website called the Unit List, trawling it all the time to see any runners' jobs that would come up. And I managed to get onto Dickinson's Real Deal for some odd dailies, and from that met people on there who suggested Facebook groups that I should join, and then from those Facebook groups I was able to get my first runners' jobs. And then from that point onwards, once I had a first significant runners' job, which was I think for 6 weeks, after that you're sort of invited into a fold where you'll get invited onto your next job by people you meet. It's a very sort of strange industry in that respect, and it's quite hard to get in, and once you're in, you really have to maintain relationships. It's all about the little black book. Networking is one of the skills that I find I excel in, and if you don't do that, it can be quite difficult to get into work. And I think especially if you're neurodiverse or even just shy, it can be quite difficult. You have to remember a lot of facts about people. You have to engage in them in their own way, and some of the techniques that I used when going into space, I specifically turn up to networking events to meet people. I'd often wear a necklace with my name on, but often wear a name badge, and I try and find points of connection with those people that I can remember last time, even if it's just to do with like their pets or their dogs or their kids. There is almost like a lot of in this industry. Yes, mentors in this industry are essential. You can't do it. You can't do anything without them in this industry, especially if you're not wealthy or related to somebody who's already in the industry. And I think people who are within the industry now, like the great women that I've mentioned, they are wanting to give back because they have experienced that themselves. I think to maintain momentum in this industry, you need friends, and I think creating, which is what I've done with Sirens, I've created my own support network, because I think that's vitally important. Therapy, this industry can be incredibly taxing on your mental health, and I think you really need to look after yourself and be kind to yourself, and also remember that everybody's coming up and everybody's changing space. Be nice to everybody, treat everybody well, because you never know who's the one that's going to take off and who will remember you and feed back. I think I'm really not about pulling up the ladder behind me. I want to create more ladders and let everybody come up at the same time as me. Unfortunately, it is very much still the case that all creative industries, and all industries actually are dominated by older cis white men, and even being a completely white passing person that I am, that I can feel othered in that room by my gender and by being, or even by being disabled. I think there was a report saying that only 23% of dramas written in the UK last year were written by women, and considering we're over 50% of the population, that's mad. So yeah, I think there's the only ways in which we're going to break that down and get more diversity into our screens and behind our screens is to keep doing initiatives. Unfortunately, one of the things that, and one of the reasons why what I'm trying to do with Script Sirens is a lot of the time the big wigs, the big industry players, they'll have schemes, but actually they don't retain the recruits that they bring in, because yes, they're saying, oh, here's a BAME scheme, and we all know that BAME is a term with problems of its own. So they've got a scheme that's badly named, and then it doesn't retain the recruits because they're being brought into environments that aren't friendly. So they're saying, oh, we're getting BAME people in, but if the working environments they're in are still quite hostile or uncomfortable, it's not going to change anything. And unfortunately, yes, it seems to be like a hot button topic in the moment, but I really think, and I wrote an article about this recently for Funny Women, that yes, it might feel difficult to be a box ticker, but we should really all be like, oh, we don't want to be tokenised, or we don't want, it's not great to feel like, oh, you only got here on a scheme because of the colour of your skin, or what religion you are, or something, or because you're disabled. And it doesn't feel very nice, but at the same time, we know that these same schemes might still be pulled from under us at any minute, and we can only make change once we're inside. Keep going. It's a really hard slog. There's a lot of rejection, and some people, and not everyone will like what you do. You need to find your tribe, find your group, and other screenwriters, other writers are actually an invaluable source of mental support as well as literal support for your work, and you'll often find that the ways in which you finally break in will be because of somebody else and their connection and linking you up, and you never know who's talking about you.